The chase has always been an interesting topic of discussion when it comes to determining the legitimacy of crowning a NASCAR champion. It was instituted in 2004 after Matt Kenseth won the 2003 Series championship on the strength of just one singular win coming in the third race of a 36 race season. They would basically just take the top 10 in points after race 26 of the season, reset their points, and have them battle for the championship across the final 10 races. And across the next few years, the chase got multiple revisions. In 2007, they increased the field size of the chase to 12 drivers and changed the points tally for when the chase started. And then in 2011, we had an interesting change. Not only was the entire point system redone, they also changed the chase format for the second time. This saw the introduction of the wildcard era of the chase. With the redone point system, they took the top 10 in the standings, and if you were 1st through 10th in points, you were automatically locked into the chase. However, positions 11th and 12th were considered the wildcard spots. If you were in the top 10 in points, the amount of wins you had also determined how many bonus points you got entering the chase. But whoever was sitting 11th to 20th in the standings and whoever had the most wins among those group of drivers in those point standings between 11 and 20, the two drivers with the most wins in that group would get the 11th and 12th seeds in the chase. However, those wins that they got during the regular season don't give them bonus points because they're relying on using the wild card spot. This format, I think, was actually extremely creative and one of the best ones when it comes to the chase era. We saw many battles when it comes to battling for the chase spot in the final races at Richmond, but unfortunately, because of Spingate, the wildcard format ultimately only lasted 3 years. After the 2013 season, NASCAR scrapped the entire chase format and decided to bring in the playoffs, a format that we all know sucked, and we had to deal with it painfully for 11 years. They would end up bringing back the chase in some sort of capacity for the 2026 season, but now I'm digressing into way far in the future. We got to go all the way back to 2013 because that was the end of the wildcard era. Well, that was the end for the NASCAR Cup Series wildcard era. Because that very same year, another one of NASCAR series decided to institute the wildcard format, and they would actually use it longer than the NASCAR Cup Series did, although not by much, but it's still pretty interesting to look at. This is when the NASCAR Mexico Series used the Chase wildcard format. In 2013, NASCAR would announce that their Toyota Series, which was the name for the Mexico Series back then, would have their own chase format called the Desafio, which translates to challenge in English. In the 15 race schedule, the Desafio would happen for the last 5 races, and the seeding would go as is. After 10 races, the top 8 championship drivers in points would automatically be locked into the Desafio, while the 2 drivers below the top 8 in points that had the most wins were selected to fill seeds 9 and 10 in the seeding of the Desafio. With how chaotic the Toyota Series was at the time and how stacked the roster was, this was going to be an extremely competitive challenge to try to make the Desafio. On the full-time roster, you had 5 different manufacturers with drivers to compete for a championship, 4 of them having multiple drivers. Chevrolet had 3 drivers in Jose Luis Ramirez, Rafael Vallina, and 2008 Series champion Antonio Perez. That is the older brother of the Sergio Perez that drives in Formula One. Luis Felipe Montano was driving full-time as Dodge's only entry, but unfortunately would have to reduce his schedule to a part-time role due to lack of funding. Mazda only had Team GP, but they had 2 full-time entries. Defending Rookie of the Year winner and future 5-time Mexico Series champion Ruben Garcia Jr. was coming to his second full-time season in the Toyota Series, and 2007 Series champion Rafael Martinez alongside him. And then you have Toyota, which had the biggest lineup of all the drivers in the series. You had future Xfinity Series champion and 2026 Coca-Cola 600 winner, and then 2010 Mexico Series Rookie of the Year Daniel Suarez driving full-time. Defending 2-time champion Jorge Goders was going to make another stab for a championship. Future 2-time series champion Abraham Calderon. Ruben Ravello, another series veteran. Ruben Pardo, brother of the late Carlos Pardo, who was the inaugural series champion in 2004. His teammate was Rogelio Lopez, the 2006 series champion, and the entry list for Toyota goes on and on. The fifth manufacturer that was going to be driving full time to compete for a championship was actually 2010 NASCAR Mini Stock Mexico Series champion Rodrigo Peralta. The Mini Stock Series was the former feeder division for the Mexico Series, and he was going to miss the opening race at Phoenix, but he was going to be driving in all the remaining 14 races to try to compete for the series championship. And he was coming off a part-time rookie season the previous year, so it didn't seem like he was going to be making much of a threat to battle for the championship. So Ford was probably not going to get it, similar to Dodge. But as the season went underway, we were going to see how the Mexico Series would adapt, to the new Desafio chase system and who was going to be crowned the champion. To open up the season at Phoenix, Abraham Calderon led the most laps and went on to get his first career win by holding off Antonio Perez, Ruben Pardo, and Ruben Garcia Jr. And in race 2, in a nail-biting finish, leading the most laps, Homero Richards was able to hold off second place to get the win. And even though he wrecked out of the next race in Mexico City, Antonio Perez dominated the race there in Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez. And he dominated the race, got the pole, led the most laps. It looks like it was going to be an easy win for him. But Hector Aguirre closed in the final laps of the race and moved him out of the way and ended up taking the win after getting 2 DNFs to start off the season, handing Perez a L in second place. Race number 4 saw Richards lead the most laps again and dominate the race, but on the final lap, Rafael Martinez, after not getting a single top 10 through the first 3 races, moved him out of the way, got around Richards to get his first win of the 2013 season. And in race number 5, Daniel Suarez dominated, getting the pole and going on to win at El Dorado. Race number 6 saw Ruben Garcia Jr. get his first career Mexico Series win by dominating the race after getting the pole at Aguascalientes. And the following race in Miguel E. Abed Autodrome saw Martinez dominate the race to get his second win of the season and his third top 10 in the first 7 races. And it would only get crazier because race number 8 saw Suarez dominate another race in Monterrey, his hometown of Monterrey. And in race number 9, Martinez got his third win on the season and had his 4th top 10 by holding off a hard-charging Ruben Pardo. And in the final race of the regular season, in the second race in Mexico City, Erwin Vences dominated the race and went on to win. But unfortunately, he had been so inconsistent with 3 finishes outside the top 20 and only a grand total of 5 top 10s in those first 10 races. He missed out making the first Desafio. Defending champion Jorge Goders also had a horrible stretch. Although he had 4 top 10s in the middle of the regular season, he only had one other top 10 outside of that and had 3 finishes. All his finishes outside those top 10s were below 19th, and he also missed the Desafio as the defending series champion. Hector Aguirre, although he won the first Mexico City race, did not make the Desafio due to only having 3 total top 10s in the first 10 races. But you know who didn't make the chase either? Rogelio Lopez only managed a single top 10 through the first 6 races and had 3 total top 10s in the first 10 races. But you're not going to believe who actually did make the Desafio. Suarez made it, Garcia made it, Richards, Perez, easy guys that showed immense talent throughout the year. Rafael Martinez, despite getting only 4 top 10s, he had 3 wins and was able to make the Desafio just barely. Ruben Ravello and Jose Luis Ramirez also made it in on winless consistency. And Rodrigo Peralta, despite missing the opening race at Phoenix, had every single race finishing ahead of the 16th position. And those 2 races where he finished in 16th, every other race was a top 10, with a best finish of second coming in the Miguel E. Abed race, Autodrome, where he lost to Martinez, and in the second Mexico City race, where he finished right behind leader Erwin Vences. Joining Peralta as a surprise driver in the Desafio would also be another winless driver getting it on consistency, being Hugo Oliveras, who only had 1 finish outside the top 15 in those first 10 races. Race number 1 of the Desafio came in the Super Ovalo Potosino for race number 11 of the 2013 NASCAR Toyota Series season, where Antonio Perez avenged what happened to him in Mexico City and what should have happened to him across the regular season, getting the pole and going on to lead every single lap to get his first win of the 2013 season to put himself on top of the leaderboard to start the Desafio. Outside of Jose Luis Ramirez, every single driver in the Desafio finished inside the top 20, and outside of Hugo Oliveros and Ruben Ravello, every single driver battling for the championship finished inside the top 10. Race number 2 of the Desafio saw them race at, again, the Autodrome of Miguel Iabed. I'm never going to be able to say that right. Where Patrick Goders, brother of Jorge, was able to take the lead late in the race, driving that 43 with the petty font, and hold off a hard-charging Daniel Suarez to become the first spoiler to win in the Desafio, because he did not make that Desafio, man. I'm about to say chase every single time. However, on the last lap of that race, there was a gigantic wreck that took out a lot of competitors, which included Ruben Pardo, Antonio Perez, who had led the most laps on the day, and Rafael Martinez, who sat on the pole because of final practice results because qualifying was canceled. Every other driver in the Desafio finished inside the top 10, leaving the biggest guys in the points standings being Homero Richards, leading the point standings after a third place finish and a fourth place finish. He led the points just 2 races in to the Desafio with just 3 races remaining in the season. Race number 13 at Aguascalientes was probably going to be the biggest race of the season up to this point, where Patrick Goders, after winning the previous race, would be on the pole for this event alongside the ever-consistent Antonio Perez. However, for Perez, he would get his second straight DNF, finishing 25th in this race and falling even further in the points race, as well as Homero Richards, who lost his points lead by finishing 30th in the race. Jose Luis Ramirez also had a sub-top 25 finish with a 26th place finish. And for another driver, it would be the end of his championship hopes, as Ruben Ravello, after finishing 19th and 6th to open up the Desafio, he finished 22nd after a gnarly wreck that forced him to miss the following race and conceded the series championship. However, other than Ruben Garcia Jr.'s 19th place mediocre run, he was the lowest out of all the drivers that finished the race in the Desafio. But worst case scenario saw Rodrigo Peralta secure his first career Mexico Series win to put himself in the points lead by just 15 points ahead of Daniel Suarez, 20 ahead of Ruben Garcia Jr., 22 ahead of Ruben Pardo, and a 23 ahead of Hugo Oliveras. The penultimate race of the season would come at Chiapas, where Daniel Suarez would put his number 3 Toyota on the pole, and after leading the most laps, it looked like it was going to be an easy win for him. However, for another fellow championship contender, it would be the end of the road, as the 53-year-old Rafael Martinez would be involved in a crash and being classified 25th in the final order, ending the 53-year-old's chance for a second series championship. Ruben Garcia Jr. was also involved in that crash and was only able to salvage a 10th place finish, while Jose Luis Ramirez was able to charge past Patrick Goders and hold off Antonio Perez to get his first win of the 2013 season after having a lackluster, inconsistent run in the first 3 races of the Desafio. Despite Ruben Pardo finishing in 6th and Homero Richards salvaging an 8th place finish, Rodrigo Peralta's conservative 11th place finish saw him have his points lead continuously by a pretty comfortable cushion heading into the final race in Mexico City. With 5 drivers battling for the championship, it looked like it was going to be an intense finale to the first ever Desafio in 2013 in Mexico City. Daniel Suarez did what he had to do and put his number 3 Toyota back on the pole for the second straight race and dominated the event, leading the most laps. But unlike Chiapas, he kept the car on the track because he knew he couldn't concede any positions. He needed to finish as high as he could to try to gain as many points to try to win the championship. He was able to hold off Antonio Perez to get his 3rd win of the season, and for Ruben Pardo, Ruben Garcia Jr., and Homero Richards, they were able to all finish inside the top 10 to all of them get their 4th top 10 in the 5-race Desafio. But it wasn't enough for any of them, as Rodrigo Peralta's 4th place run was able to seal the championship by just 8 points over Daniel Suarez. The top 5 in points all finished inside the top 10 in 4 of the 5 races in the Desafio. But the deciding factor was that Rodrigo Peralta's only finish outside the top 10 was the 11th place finish he had at Chiapas. While the other 4 drivers, all of their races that they finished outside the top 10, they all either finished 19th or worse. And Rodrigo Peralta, despite missing the season opening race in Phoenix, was able to get the championship as the most deserving driver. He ended with 1 win, 6 top 5s, 11 top 10s. He led 134 laps and had an average finish of 7.1. The highest average finish outside of Peralta's was Ruben Pardo and Ruben Garcia Jr., who both had an average finish of 9.5, and that's with an extra race to deal with. Peralta straight up was just the best driver across the entire 2013 season and was able to bring the only Ford on the entire roster the championship by just 8 points and only winning one race. The rest of the top 10 in the Desafio saw Antonio Perez finish 6th despite having the best regular season. Just those inconsistent runs to start the Desafio did him in. He finished 6th in points. Hugo Oliveras finished 7th. Rafael Martinez had 3 wins, 5 top 5s, and 6 top 10s, and he finished 8th in points. Jose Luis Ramirez finished 9th with that win he had at Chiapas, and Ruben Ravello, after missing the race at Chiapas due to that crash he had at Aguascalientes, rounded out the 2013 Desafio. But with how successful the first ever Desafio was, seeing that the only Ford on the entire roster in Rodrigo Peralta, who in his first full series season got a win and was able to snag the series championship, this format for the Desafio looked to be a staple for years to come. 2014 would see the Desafio actually be changed slightly. Now the only difference was that the top 10 made it in on points, while the 11th and 12th seeds would be the wild card. And it would be similar to 2013 for most of the regular season. Antonio Perez couldn't win a race, but got a top 10 in the first 6 races of the season, while Daniel Suarez won 4 of the first 7 races and was comfortably in the points lead. But Ruben Ravello missed the first race of the season and DNF'd the next 3, but would go on to make the Desafio after getting a win at Aguascalientes. And Erwin Vences missed the first 4 races, but after having 5 top 10s, which included a win in the regular season finale, he somehow made the Desafio. With the points reset following the Desafio would actually be an extreme disappointment compared to the previous years. Ruben Pardo would win the opener, Erwin Vences would win race 2, Daniel Suarez would go on to get his 5th win of the season by winning at Aguascalientes, Ruben Ravello would win at Chiapas, and Homero Richards, after having finishes of 18th, 21st, 28th, and 35th across the first 4 races of the Desafio, would go on to win the finale to finish 11th in points. But the top 2 in the standings, champion Abraham Calderon and Ruben Garcia Jr., did not manage to win a single race across the 2014 season, which, remember, NASCAR doesn't like it when their champions don't have many wins or any at all. Calderon's first championship saw him get 0 wins, 5 top 5s, and 11 top 10s with an average finish of 8th, and Ruben Garcia Jr. also had no wins, 3 top 5s, 10 top 10s, a pole, and an average finish of 10.9. And Calderon only won the championship by 9 points over Ruben Garcia Jr., by 11 over Ruben Ravello, and 14 over Ruben Pardo. What happened to Rodrigo Peralta, by the way, because he was the defending series champion? Well, his team would actually switch to Toyota and would have a disastrous season. Although he had a first good few races, getting a second place finish at Phoenix to open up the season, he ended the season horrendously, just like how Jorge Goters had a horrible year in his title defense in 2013. Rodrigo Peralta's 2014 stats are this: 0 wins, 2 top 5s, 3 top 10s, just 22 laps led, and his average finish fell down to 16.9 as he finished 18th in the standings. Seeing that the top 2 in the Mexico Series points did not score a win, and remember, as I said before, NASCAR doesn't like it when their champions and best drivers atop the standings don't have any wins. They like winning to count more. They decided to scrap the Wildcard format after the 2014 season. That was the last time any of the NASCAR Series used the Wildcard format. Remember, the Cup Series got rid of the Wildcard format after the 2013 season because of the whole Spingate fiasco. In 2015, however, would be the last season that the Mexico Series would have a playoff, but it would be an extremely different playoff. The format would be changed to what we know as the playoffs, kind of. It was still called the Desafio. After the first 10 races, the top 10 in the regular season standings were automatically locked in, but if you won a race during the regular season, you were automatically locked into the Desafio as long as you finished inside the top 15 in points after the regular season finale in Potosino. But here's where it gets a little bit on the different side. In the playoffs in the NASCAR Cup Series, you would have rounds consisting of 3 races where they would eliminate 4 drivers. So the round of 16 would happen with the 16 drivers. Then after 3 races, they would eliminate 4 of them. They had the elimination style format in the 2015 Mexico Series. However, they eliminated 2 drivers after every single race because the Desafio was only 5 races long. So after the first race in El Dorado, they would eliminate 2 drivers. Then after Aguascalientes, they would eliminate another 2, then another 2, another 2, and the final 4 drivers would battle for the series championship. Ruben Pardo would win the season opening race at Phoenix before Ruben Ravello won the next 2 races. Rodrigo Peralta, after DNFing 2 of the first 3 races, was able to get his second career win by winning race number 4 of the season. And then Erwin Vences won race 5. Santiago Tovar, the 2013 Rookie of the Year, got his first career win by winning race number 6 at Aguascalientes. Ruben Garcia Jr. won the next race in El Dorado. Then you had Erwin Vences going back to back. And the final race of the regular season saw Ruben Ravello getting his 3rd win on the season. And in the Desafio, multiple guys getting eliminated in the first races. Antonio Perez would actually finish 12th overall in the standings despite getting eliminated after round number 3 because they did the thing where they would just put your regular season points in after getting eliminated. Rogelio Lopez won 2 of the final 5 races despite getting eliminated after the first Desafio race. Ruben Garcia Jr. went on to win his first series championship of 5 as of this recording over Ruben Ravello. Rodrigo Peralta would go on to get 3rd in the final standings in what would be his final season in the NASCAR Mexico Series, which we'll get to in a moment. And Rafael Martinez, on a winless season, managed to make the Final 4, and after DNFing in the final race in Chiapas, he would finish 4th in the standings. However, after the 2015 season, not just the playoff format, the Desafio, but the NASCAR Mexico Series as a whole went into a hiatus. If you don't know, after the 2015 season, Formula One had their Mexican Grand Prix return to the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez for the 2016 running for the first time in multiple decades. And the sanctioning body decided that they were going to cancel the entire season to just support that one race, which I think is ridiculous. You could have probably had an abbreviated schedule or something. You didn't have to cancel the entire season. But because of that, many drivers disappeared. And after the year hiatus, the Mexico Series would come back in 2017. But drivers like Rodrigo Peralta, just 2 years after winning a championship and battling for another one, has not been seen in the NASCAR Mexico Series since, despite winning that 2013 championship. And multiple other drivers as well ceased to run in the series after that whole hiatus thing. That wouldn't be the end for the shenanigans of the wildcard format, however, as in 2023, the NASCAR Mexico Series finally brought back a playoff format where they just called it the playoff format, and they would have 6 drivers qualify for the playoffs, the top 4 in the regular season point standings, and then 2 wildcard drivers behind them that had the most wins. Get this, though. This was only a 2-race playoff. After the very first race, the bottom 2 drivers in the points would be eliminated, and there would be a final 4 in the final race. This would only last 1 season as Salvador de Alba won his 2nd championship in 3 years. In 2024, they revised the playoff format. Now it was expanded to 10 drivers, and any driver with a win could qualify for the playoffs, and the remaining positions being determined by the regular season point standings. And now it was a 3-race playoff instead of 2. After the first 2 races, the bottom 3 drivers would be eliminated, and their points would be reset to their regular season total, in addition to points that were accumulated throughout the 2 playoff races. And in the final race, there would be a Final 4 again. And in 2024, that's when Ruben Garcia Jr. won his 5th series championship. In 2025, it was revised again. The playoff format would now have 5 races, just like it used to in the first 2 seasons in 13 and 14. And there would be 10 drivers in the first round of the playoffs. And then after 2 races, they would eliminate 3 drivers to create the round of 7. And after the next 2 races, they would eliminate the next 3 to make the final 4. And that is currently what the format is to this day. Alex de Alba won the 2025 Mexico Series Championship. So the Mexico Series used the wildcard format after the Cup Series disbanded it. They used it in 2013, 14. They kind of used it in 15 in a way, kind of like the playoff. Then they brought it back in 23, which was weird. Changed it in 24 and changed it in 25. And who knows if we'll get another change. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I kind of got this idea while I was watching the 2026 Coca-Cola 600, where after the tragic passing of Kyle Busch, Daniel Suarez dedicated his win to him on fabulous strategy and amazing defense on those few restarts before the rain came with like 25 laps remaining. He won that race, and I was remembering, oh wait, yeah, Daniel Suarez is the Mexican driver. He raced in the Mexico Series for a while, and I was looking at him. He raced there for 5 full seasons and somehow managed to never win the championship. But the closest he ever was that 2013 season, the first year they instituted some sort of chase system. So I started researching, and lo and behold, I found one of the most interesting chase runs, the Desafio, that saw a guy that only has 2 career wins and was out of the sport just 2 years later in Rodrigo Peralta's 2013 championship. That was the closest Suarez ever came to winning a Mexico Series championship. And yeah, those 3 years, especially those first two, that was the last time we saw the wild card format and then their really weird elimination style format in 2015. So I hope you guys like that video. Please like, please subscribe. Make sure you subscribe to the channel because I know like 98% of the viewers are not subscribed. So drop a subscribe button, drop a like, hit the subscribe button. We're trying to hit 1,000 subs. Hype the video, do whatever you want. And I hope you guys like this video. Please like, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.